Welcome to another beautiful fall day in central Wisconsin.
I was going to say, I mean, that's good for you. I'm in midsummer here. It's still 88 today. I mean, I told Al yesterday, I was like, I'm getting out the hoodie and the sweatpants next week, regardless. If I go out on a heat stroke, I go out on a heat stroke. But I'm done. I'm done waiting for the hoodie and the shorts. Like, I got the tees in Wisconsin, which I think kind of like maybe catapulted me a little bit ahead of like, you know, where things were, you know, with the weather. But I was like, this is it. This is what I love. This is who I am as a person. This is my weather temp. And then I came back to like 90s. I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. I want leaves falling off the trees because it's cool in this time of year. I don't want them falling off the tree and sizzling on the concrete. I want fall weather, and I want sweatpants, and I want it now.
Yeah, it's 68 right now, so I'm okay with that. And it's going to be 80. So I'm actually, I think I'm going to head up north to my buddy's place up north. It's 3 hours further north where the leaves are definitely turning. It's going to be different. But yeah, I got the heat, man. I know people talk about it as like, it's too hot to run. I get it. It's like, yeah. I think about that a lot with Chattanooga, is like how hot it got there versus how hot it really gets here.
Yeah. And they felt that this last weekend for sure. Yeah. Before we get into the topic for today, I took a side shot at the archaeology and archaeologist, fringe profession the other day. And I had a text message from one of my athletes, and he said, didn't you just talk about archaeology in one of your last few podcasts? Well, guess what? They found a new one with food still in its mouth from 66 to 70 million years ago. Sleep on that one. And I'm like, what? What do we? No. I mean, listen, I'm sure there may be like a 0.5% truth to that, but I'm like, come on, how do you? Yeah, I don't know. I tend to think that it's like, hey, there's like this conspiracy going on with archaeologists. Like, listen, if we all just stick together on this, then we can just create whatever species we want and say whatever we want. And as long as we back each other, no one else is smart enough to have any idea if we're even telling the truth or not. So like, we just keep pumping out these dinosaurs. Oh, it's got food in its mouth. Oh, it's still got a baby in its stomach. We can tell by the half fingernail that we found, 17 feet underground in this remote outback in Australia. And the next thing you know, it's in the Smithsonian. We all win. I mean, I'm telling you, there's got to be like a secret society where they're like, listen, we can just do whatever we want to. And, once you're in the club, you can't ever leave, right? Because you can't sell us out. You can't go out and be like, the Heidi Fleiss of archaeology. You got to just stick with it and stay there until you die. But I mean, it's 66 million goes and there's food in your mouth. I don't know. I have a hard time buying that.
We could turn this whole podcast into secret societies right now for all I care.
No, dude, I know. I knew as soon as those words came out of my mouth, I was like, now I pictured you like sitting up in your chair a little bit more, like you took a little bit of a sip of coffee, probably leaning like full in. Yeah, dude, I know that is
so intriguing, man.
That is one. Yeah, I know. But listen, hey, the secret society is almost like the topic of today. Like we talked. Obviously, listen, there's still a lot of racing to go on, right? You still got a lot of athletes. You got California, Arizona, Florida, Cozumel. Hell, you got Kona next weekend, right? And so there's still a ton of racing to go on. There's still a lot of 70.3s to happen. A lot of people are still racing, but a lot of people are at the tail end of, their racing season or their post season, right? And it's always an interesting topic to me, like this time of year, because you are kind of like sitting in no man's land. You see, and it's funny, right? Because I think you see both sides of the coin and how they almost envy each other. Like you see people who are done with racing and they're like, man, this is so good. Like I don't have the obligations. Like I'm just working out Monday through Friday. I can do whatever I want to on the weekends. And this is great. But at the same time, sometimes they're like, man, I really wish I had another race going on. Like, man, wouldn't it be nice to like be in the thick of it and the training? Like I'm in the zone. I got this big event coming up. Like how exciting is that? Like they kind of get FOMO.
I did watch the chat the other night.
What'd you say?
I did watch and chat the finish line the other night. I was like, damn.
Yes, I'm telling you, like you get, and then people are like, I want to sign up for stuff. And then you got people who are still in the thick of it and they're doing both, right? They're also like, man, look at these people who are done with training for the year. It must be nice to like be able to like, check out for a little bit, be a little more flexible. And there's people on both, I think on both sides of kind of both sides of the aisle, which are kind of like, they kind of envy each other, but also are kind of like, don't envy each other in this time of year. And we get, questions all the time about, what to do. And I think that's why a lot of people, because there still is racing, the topic today is kind of like slowing down this time of year in a lot of areas, right? Slowing down in terms of training, not slowing down in terms of like, becoming slower, but, is you have both. And that's why I think people who are in the off season try to keep pace because other people are still keeping pace because of their races. They see these things going on. Like you still got Kona, everybody's jazzed. Come December, no one really gets over jazzed, right? No one's ever really like, man, I can't wait. There's 6 months out. Like, let's go, baby. No, there is no race envy. There is no like FOMO. Everyone is checked out, and it's kind of like archaeology secret society. Like everybody's in the same boat. Like we're like, hey, here we are. We don't have any races going on. You're checked out. I'm checked out. I'm not falling behind. But it is like you see so many athletes get done with these races, and I'm seeing this a lot right now too. Is like they get done with these huge races, and their mind is still amped. They're like, I'm getting back to it this week, baby. Let's go. I'm ready to do it well this year. I'm all in. And I'm like, well, first of all, we don't need to be all in yet. Or even like with a toe in the water. We need to be like on the concrete around the pool, not even in the pool. Like just go sit in the lounge chair for a bit and then consider when you really want to jump in. And then what I see is like a Monday green. So like compliance and training peaks. And then I see a red and then a red. And then I'm getting back on the train. I'm like, I don't care about you getting on the train right now. Matter of fact, let's miss the train, right? Like, I don't know. Let's stop saying these things that we really don't want to do, because coaches like this time of year, like I know you're the same way. Like I don't need to hear it. In fact, I prefer not. I don't want you to be fully on board. I want you to be stuck at the fucking train station for all I care with a newspaper and a funnel cake. And when you want to get on said train, get on said train. But dear God, don't get on the fastest speed bullet. Get on like the train that's going to take like loops around town and stop every mile at the nearest food truck. Do that train. Don't get on the speed bullet train that's going to take you, that you think's going to take you from one destination to the next one. I'm telling you, like there's a lot of great that you can do for next year right now that doesn't involve going even like remotely in and just like flirt with the perimeter is what I think you should do right now. And then the other biggest thing is every opportunity you have to be outside, you should be outside, period. Whether it's skipping all 3 indoor swims and going and finding a lake once a week to go swim, you should do that. Whether it's skipping a bike workout because you'd be on the trainer when you could go run outside, do that. Because we're only about, well, it doesn't feel like it right now, but I'm sure we are. We're probably 60, 90 days out from where, there's not going to be as much, it's not going to seem like there's as much daylight. You're going to wake up as dark. You're going to be back home when it's dark. It's going to be too cold to want to do things you want to. You're going to be less likely to get out of bed and go to the gym and get your swim on. Start banking the outside time right now and do it with fun and do it with pleasure and slow down and enjoy these things right now. Because I'm telling you, like, if you don't stock up before we hibernate, like you're going to start starving yourself with motivation come December and January.
Yeah. I was thinking about this a lot because I've, I was talking about during training, and that day I was talking about, I bought a scale. And I started weighing myself a lot, and it was just driving me crazy and everything like that. And since Ironman, I haven't really done a lot of anything. I kind of, like I said, I tried to get on that train, and I hurt my back like the next day. So I had to back off the train for a while, but I've been kind of just doing little things like you're saying, getting outside, mowing the lawn, sitting outside, working, doing whatever, and just kind of going about my business and not really like stressing about everything. And I started, because I'm always just intrigued by as I get older, by this cortisol and like, what do they call that? Around your belly, that secondhand fat kind of shit. What's it called? Anyway.
I mean, aren't those just called like love handles?
Visceral fat.
Visceral fat. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, so I've just been kind of doing that and everything. And I just like, haven't really been trying or anything. And I was kind of looking at them, some days you look in the mirror and you're like, damn, I'm fucking popping today. And other days you're like, I'm just like putting on weight, like just a whale. But anyway, I was like, man, I feel pretty lean. So I've just been kind of doing a whole lot of nothing and kind of just thinking about, how we push our cortisol up, and the stress levels and everything during the race and everything. I think we need to. So that's where I kind of got on this slow down, the case for slowing down this, after your race or whatever, because I was watching Mark Allen. I watched a little clip from him and he was talking about his whole strategy of how he couldn't win Kona. And then he started training, slow by heart rate with
Moffatone.
Yeah. And everybody, he'd be out with his buddies and they'd all be going, come on, man, you're losing ground. He just stuck with it and ended up turning into, I guess, the Iron War that year. And, he won it. And then, so it's just like, I think he said something to the effect of your aerobic energy is almost limitless if you can tap it. And that just really resonates with me because I think a lot of us, including me in the last podcast, probably said, I'm going to really get into some HIIT workouts this fall. And it's just like you say shit. We're on this podcast and we just say stuff sometimes, because we're just talking. But when I step back and really look at that from a real perspective, it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense for me because even because one of the things I do a lot is like this morning, I just got up and walked on the treadmill and normally I walk at like a 3 or something like that. And I was like, man, this feels like it's pushing my boundaries. So I went down to 2.8 and I was like, all right, that feels better. And I just kept it there, and cause it's sort of that thing that aerobic, not that would be at an aerobic threshold necessarily, but you know what I mean? It's kind of like when you kind of you're working a little harder than you might feel like it. And I think that we spend most of the season kind of on that cusp. And now's a really good time to sort of like, I had an athlete the other day said he went out for a bike ride and didn't look at anything and just rode. And he goes, it was the most enjoyable bike ride he's had in months.
Yeah, so, probably saw things you hadn't seen before.
Right. So it's just that sort of mentality that's been really in my head, because we always want to keep getting better. And I guess the best way to get better right now is just to kind of, regroup and, let your body recover and heal and build that aerobic, system that's limitless.
Build the reservoir. I mean, I love everything you said. And I even saw this with myself. Like I've been back training because I agree with everything you said. And I agree, obviously there's obviously an importance in HIIT workouts, but it's also, like anytime in HIIT, like anything that's above, threshold, anything that's high intensity, whether it's for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, like, yes, we need that eventually. But I saw with myself, like I just had this conversation with myself, Monday. So like I've been training like insane, like very, very consistently. And I would say 85, maybe 90% of everything that I was doing was aerobic. Running 3 to 4 times a week, all aerobic. Cycling 3 to 4 times a week, all aerobic. The only time I would add in any intensity on the bike was if I did big gear stuff. So I'm pushing higher power, but as you know, like my heart rate was still low. So I'm like, that's what I love about big gear work is I can be in like zone 3 watts, but it's zone 2 heart rate. So I'm still getting some like muscular endurance, but I'm not stressing out, my system as much. And then swimming, it was all easy. Paddles, pull buoy, just getting in work. And so for those 2-3 weeks, I felt better and better and better and better every day. Every day. HRV was up 10%, resting heart rate was low. And then I did what everybody does. You're like, God, I feel good. Let's ramp it up a little bit. And so last week, I did pretty much intensity almost every other day. And I tracked my HRV and resting heart rate, and it dropped like 4% that whole week. And I could not get it back to where I wanted it to be for the life of me. And so finally Did an easy day Saturday, easy day Sunday. Then I took Monday off, talked about that on the podcast, and just took a total day. And I was like, all right, now I'm going to reset and do more stuff. And it's gone back up. But I just got ahead of myself. And I think we do that a lot, especially this time of year when like there's so like you just said, it is legit limitless in terms of like what we can do with our aerobic capacity. People just don't want to do that kind of work because it's too boring, or they get too impatient and start chasing extra. And where the return on investment isn't there, but the risk is so high. And again, like just what you talked about, like the amount of work you can do right now. And that's why I think just general periodization is, I'm not going to say it's dead, but it is dead for, I think, for most age group athletes, because they're like, if you're doing this time of year, like I would try to accumulate as much easy aerobic volume. And this is technically, you know, if you're looking at people that do periodization, you got your base, your build, and your peak, and you focus on different things during each of those periods, get ready for your race. And most people would say like build your aerobic engine, you know, as much as possible, and then go, you know, and then go more like race pace. Well, if I'm doing my year, I'm doing as much aerobic volume as I want right now. And then when I hit winter, then I might reduce all my hours and go more higher intensity, and then go into like a build phase and be longer and, you know, longer intervals. It's a great time to do that. But then again, like there's this aerobic piece that, again, like in terms of, like you said, cortisol levels, like you're all into cortisol now. I'm all into like glucose and sugar, and all like the more of a roller coaster you have, the worse it is for your body. I mean, I'm pretty sure anyone can tell you that, and there's endless amounts of scientific research that tell you that, like, you know, insane spikes and insane lows are never good. Like stable is great. And so the more stable you can treat your body, the less likelihood and more even, the less highs and less lows, the more likely you are to stay healthy, to be consistent, to have higher energy. Right. And then this aerobic stuff, like, and then especially just pairing it with like the types of, you know, the time of year that you have, you know, like if you have limited availability in terms of, because life is so stressful, not time. And I think that's something a lot of athletes confuse. Like, I just don't have a lot of time, so I got to go quality, baby. Well, Michael, if the rest of your life is you know, a dumpster fire, then you should probably use the majority of that extra time to help dissipate the stress that you have outside of training, not to just reduce aerobic work and only do quality training. And you see that happen all the time. Like, yeah, I just need to go quality. I'm like, everything is quality. Aerobic work is maximum quality. Like, especially if you're doing long course racing, like that is what you need the most. You might be able to get away with it from a short period of time by just going quality. But if the rest of your life is stressful, right, and you're an age group athlete, man or woman, you got kids, you got a job, you travel, you got kids sports, like it is just fucking stressful. Like I was just looking at the calendar for hockey for the next 3 months, and I'm like, I don't even know if I'm in a life Friday afternoon through Sunday for the next like 90 days. And so that means a condensed work week, which means higher workload, which means more stress. So your first thoughts, oh, I better cram in the intensity, right, and go short and sweet. Like, no, it's like, if I'm going to be even extra stressed, then during the week, I should probably just, you know, do as much aerobic work as I can. Then when I go on the road, you know, if I've got access to a treadmill at one of these hotels, then maybe do like a short, you know, run interval and just knock it out. Or if I don't, run easy. And because I think what happens is you create more opportunities each and every day to string more days and more weeks together without so much risk. And I think that's like where we've gotten so much in training, is that we're trying to maximize every single thing that we do, whether it's nutrition or training or intensity or you know, whatever it is. You know, like always go back to like one of the conversations you and I had about, you know, like cold plunging. You're like, sometimes you can do it. It's a good thing, but you can do it too much and for too long and too cold to where it actually turns out to be too much of a stressor for your body. You know, like the quote, the dose is, the poison is in the dose, right? It's not always like just poison. It's just how much you're going to give somebody. And I think when you look at athletes these days and the amount of what we're trying to extract from ourselves, we are continuing to actually increase the likelihood of things not going well. because we're throwing so much at ourselves, whether it's increased in training, more volume, more intensity, more fueling, like all these things at once, and you're not taking into account the added extra stress that we have. And if you have all those, like when are we actually recovering? When are we having downtime? When are we soaking it in? And I think the margin for error, and that's honestly like over the last 2 years, I'd love to see it. I would argue, or predict rather, that the DNF rate has increased in the last 2 years across all Ironman events.
Seems like.
And I firmly believe that is because the way that most athletes are training, the way that most athletes are experimenting with fuel, is creating like so much less room for error that even the slightest like adversity or added stress that impacts their plan, right, is detrimental and sometimes a day breaker. And I know I've talked about for the last few months like how important I think metabolic flexibility is, but I also think like if you just remove the word metabolic and you just remove that with the word stress, how stress flexible am I? How am I able to dissipate stress? Am I great at it or am I terrible at it? And to me, that largely comes down to my aerobic system, right? How robust and how durable is my aerobic system? Fatigue resistance is another one. That's largely aerobic, right? The bigger your aerobic base, the more fatigue resistance you are. Like if you did a 3-hour workout, and then after the first 20 minutes of the workout, you went 8 minutes, all out, and then you recovered, and then you pedaled for 2 more hours, then did another 8-minute all out effort, what would the delta be? Right. And so if let's say you did, again, like a 3-hour, because that's like, that's not a lot of people do that, but that's a way to like measure fatigue resistance, right? Is like how much power you can push at the end. So let's say you do your first 8-minute interval after 20 minutes and you're able to hold 200 watts. And then towards the end of the ride, after you've ridden another, hour and a half, right, in zone 2, and then you tried the same 8-minute effort and it drops all the way down to like 145, 150, then you have terrible fatigue resistance. And most athletes are like, oh, I just got to do more threshold work. No, you don't. You really don't. You got to do more aerobic work. So you're not eating into that, your ability to push intensity. And that's one I've quoted it multiple times on this podcast from Joe Filio, one of the most well-respected triathlon coaches on the planet over the last 2 decades across Ironman and across the ITU side. And he said, the speed is only irrelevant as your ability to hold it the last 500 meters. In terms of like his position on like endless track workouts and endless speed, it was like your speed is irrelevant unless you can hold it the last, you can out sprint the guy. And that's not who wants it more. That's not who has the highest VO2 max. It's who has the highest, aerobic. So over the course of the day, they're not eating into their, to their body as much. And so that stuff can start now, and you can do it, like you said, like your athlete, by going outside, disconnecting from the computer and just putting in endless miles. It might not look great on paper, but get rid of the paper, right? Put your Garmin in your back pocket, start and stop. And then when you save it, here's a novel idea. Don't even look at it. I mean, especially if a coach, don't even look at it. Throw in a smiley face or a comment. It's irrelevant. I don't know when the last time I went out and compared routes was, ever. You just do it. You do it. You said, I'm proud of myself. I got it done, knocked out, moving on. Because you kind of know. You don't, why do you, I don't need to look because I already know. That felt okay. So the results are probably going to be okay. Right? I felt really good. So the results are probably going to be really good. Does it matter what I did 3 years ago on that same route? It's completely irrelevant. Right. It's why we always kind of joke about when you send an athlete form, and they're like, yeah, they're a 55-year-old male. And they're like, yeah, running is my strength. I ran track in high school. Like, sorry, bro, that's not going to cut it. Like that doesn't qualify anymore as running is my strength. Right. But like, so like the continuous comparison too, it's like, just go out and like, and that'd be my challenge for people. It's like, if you're feeling good and you want to improve is just wake up and be like, I wonder how much aerobic work I can get in today in whatever modality I choose. Whether it's walking, hiking, rucking, trail running, running around the soccer field while your kid plays ball, cycling, on your road bike, on your tri bike, on your gravel bike, on a fucking e-bike, right? Fat tire bike, mountain bike, whatever it is. Same thing with swimming. Like I want to go in there, I'll swim a little bit, and maybe I'm getting bored, so I'm going to aqua jog for 20. Then I'm going to go swim again. Like just accumulating that aerobic work, because there's a time and a place for specificity. And right now, if you're for next year, right now is not it. People want to start being overly specific too early, and they hear phrases like economy and becoming more efficient. And they think about, and yeah, like, throw in a couple strides or a few spin ups or a few pickups in the water to make sure, our neuromuscular patterns are kind of staying intact and we're not becoming stale and sloppy with our form. But man, like this is again, like as soon as the weather does drop, like it'll be the best time of year to accumulate volume, instead of what happens, which is when most people take this time of year, they either go way all in, and then come January, February, they are all out, and then they're kind of fighting against all things because it's a depressing time of year anyway for most people, and they're also unmotivated. So getting on the bike is probably not going to happen, right? And then they're closer to their race, versus like, get out right now and just have the fun with it, build that robust, because that's what, come the time of year when it's going to be harder, you're going to have more energy because of you're more aerobically efficient, right? Like we've all been to a place or out to eat or to, really a hotel or anywhere, and you're walking up the flight of stairs, and there's a person next to you who's, maybe a little bit overweight or maybe a little older, and they're holding on to the rail, and they're out of breath after 2 steps. It's not because they don't do threshold intervals on the bike. It's not because they don't head to the track. It's because they have no aerobic capacity at all, because they're probably largely sedentary. And so like you think about what you feel like when you get to the top of the stairs versus, Fred, when he gets to the top of the stairs and has to stop for a second, like that is the difference, right? Is being someone who's aerobically healthy, right? And then someone who is aerobically unhealthy. And I think like when you kind of drill things down to in its most simplest form, like that is what we should always be trying to improve on, is that part of our system, even though it might not be fun, right, for some people or as flashy, that is the part that's going to reap you the most benefits, and you'll appreciate it this time next year.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Sometimes when I get on those stairs, I can be gassed, even if I'm in good shape. Yeah, it's sort of like if it comes out of nowhere and I'm not really warmed up or something, I think. But yeah, I mean, interesting. Going back to that high school runner, I had a thought about that. It's like, yeah, it may not be your strength, but at this point in your life, but I do think that there's something to be said for it could be an intuitive strength. I usually think about that with swimmers. If they swam in high school, I'm like, okay, we can get this going, right? And there's something to be said for sort of understanding it intuitively. And because as somebody who never really grew up in endurance sports, I do think there's a learning curve or something. There's sort of a DNA code about really kind of understanding pacing, endurance, and things like that. And I think a lot of times that's what keeps people out of the sport, because they think about running, a marathon or swimming 2 miles or something, and it's just so far beyond their even comprehension that if at least mentally we can get it through there, we're a head start. So, yeah, but as you were talking, I was thinking about this fall, and one of our favorite authors, Bukowski, who has this line, "Don't try." I'm just so drawn to that all the time. It's sort of, what does that mean? And I always think it means don't try to be somebody you're not, or don't try to get out of yourself or whatever, or just let your authentic self emerge. I think that's really, I think that's our goal in life, really, is just to be our authentic self and sort of trust the universe to deliver that. And I think it takes patience. And to me, patience is the key right now. And it's sort of like, if I love what you said about, your training plan becomes a menu this time of year, because it's sort of like there, if you want it, you don't have to eat all of it, but it's something to kind of look at. and, maybe uses a guide, of course, but certain days your authentic self may not feel like doing whatever that is, but I do think it's sort of like, don't try, but stay in the game, or stay in the game, but don't try, or something like that.
Yep.
Because, it's just like we all get done with these races, and I did it too this year. It's sort of like, okay, that was all right, but how can I, cut that, time in half, or cut an hour off of that, or whatever. And immediately you want to start going at that. But I think I said earlier that all year I erred on the side of aerobic training this year. I didn't really, because that's always been my heart. We talk about this, and I come from, playing sports like baseball or hockey and basketball and stuff like that. I never really did the endurance thing. So that, I think, is the sort of disconnect with a lot of people regarding aerobic training. And it's hard to see because you're not used to growing up that way or training that way. But in this particular sport, that becomes the baseline. That becomes that cake you talk about. And it's so important to develop that. It's almost like, that's why I said intuitively runners maybe understand. It's sort of like they have that built into their system a little bit more than somebody like me who came, out of other sports. And it's just this thing I have to always talk myself into is like, get better at being aerobic, and get off the numbers and quit worrying about all this shit and really kind of get good at that. And I talk about that with, it's like, I'm just a drum nerd, and I always watch these videos of these guys, and they're all just saying you got to be able to play it slow to get it fast, So if you don't own it at the slower pace, then you're never going to be consistent, at a fast pace. You may have your days and your moments and things like that, but you have to have that sort of like baseline, that foundation to create on. And that's just been hard for me to learn. And, I've been doing this for a long time, and I still go in and out of that all the time. And it's just like, maybe I spent a lot of time this year doing it, and now immediately my mindset goes, all right, go fast, because you got it. And I was like, no, I could probably use a whole nother year of doing what I just did. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
there's that, like you were talking about, was it Mark Allen you were talking about earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That story. I think I've shared before where he had never beaten Dave Scott, and when he started working with Phil Moffatone, he did like, I think 6 to 8 months of legit no intensity, zero. Everything was done aerobically, and then signed up for this race over in Asia like the last minute, and that was the first time he had ever beaten him. And I think like we do. I just gave an example like how carried away we can get after such a short period of time because we want so much more. We got 5 to 10 watts, but we want 30. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. There's definitely a purpose, and there's definitely a need, right, to go hard. Right. That's how your body, progressive overload, right. Overreaching, is how your body adapts and becomes stronger next time. But it's trying to do it every day where, you just tend to continuously step over and over and over across that line to eventually you're just going to fall off. And I have this conversation a lot with athletes that, when you give them a range, always go on the high end or even like 2 watts higher. And like the return on investment here is zero, but the added stress and the added likelihood that you're now increased your, or you've decreased your margin of error over the next 48 hours is greater. You give a range of 200 watts to 240 and they hit 243, 244, overdoing it, overcooking it because they want to go high because higher and harder is always better. They'd have been much better off doing 200, 205, 210 for, a long interval and feeling really, really good when they're done. Because tomorrow, the likelihood is they're going to wake up feeling better recovered, better adapted, more motivated, higher likelihood you're going to sleep better, get quality sleep. It's easier to fuel after, a session like that. and you wake up the next day able to do it again, you know. And I know it's hard to like wrap your brain around, because I think a lot of athletes already recognize that they're not consistent, right? And so being consistent is something that's almost foreign to them. So like, well, I don't need to worry about the next couple of days because I'm not even sure I'm going to get them in. So I'm just going to go blast out right now. And you're just piling on stress out. You're piling on stress, and then you're piling on zero, you know, movement the next few days to relieve that stress and recover. And I think that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with, is that, you know, being completely still and sedentary, like you might actually feel worse the next day. Like going out for a walk, or even doing like an easy 30-minute spin or a splash in the water, like you're going to feel better. I know it, you know, that's like, to me, that's like the recovery / exercise that promotes the ability to train the next couple of days. But if you're finding yourself in that hole all the time, then you're probably chasing things too high because you want them too bad and you want them to happen too quick. You know, instead of thinking about what's going to happen next week, thinking about where I could be in a year or two. And I get it, like that's not the world that we live in, right? It's not sexy to think about long term, right? You know, longevity and health, like it's a buzzword, but most people can't even practically handle doing it for a day, much less think about how it's going to, you know, improve their quality of life down the road. You know, and I think that's, you know, we all have our why, we all have our reasons, but I mean, that to me is one of those things that, you know, you have to take into consideration, because to me, it's about, hey, what do I need to do to allow myself to be the most consistent that I can possibly be for as long as possible. Right. Because in going back to like the yo-yos, you know, like, you know, spikes, you know, and, you know, mountains and valleys, you know, if I asked you to go drive, you know, through the mountains of Colorado for 10 miles, it'd be pretty fucking stressful. Right? Ups and downs and curves, same mileage, right? But you got all these extra peaks and valleys and downhills and uphills and curves. You got to be on it. Versus if I said, you know, drive 10 miles on Kansas going west, and you're like, that was the easiest 10 miles of my life. It might have been boring as hell, but there was nothing to look at, but that was easy. Like, it's a lot less stressful. And I think that, like, when we look at our training, we look at how we lay out our weeks, and we look at how life, you know, may or may not impact our ability to absorb that. It's like, you know, err on the side of caution, err on the side of absorption, not err on the side of overflowing. You know, yeah, you need to walk, you need to fill up a glass and walk it across a room. Like, do you want to fill it all the way to the top? No, because you got to walk slower to not spill it. Or two, then it's going to spill, then it's going to cause you to take a long time. Just leave a little bit of room. Stop trying to overflow everything, right? Or take your time to do it. This is like every other conversation I have with Hayden basically every day. Slow down, do it right the first time, and you will spend actually less time doing it than doing it over again. Because he'll like today, like Tuesday, he did hockey for 2 hours, came home, and he's at the point where I'm like, dude, you need like deodorant. You smell.
Hockey gear smells worse than anything.
Oh, dude. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, he smells like a walking staph infection. That's how bad he smells.
That's like running shorts on steroids.
Seriously, it is. So like, he went upstairs and he just loves to like be in the mix. So he goes upstairs and tries to take like the fastest shower ever. And he comes downstairs. And I'm like, dude, I can still smell you. Like you smell like a staph infection. Like, I can see the bacteria jumping off your body. Go back upstairs and shower. And he gets so pissed. And I'm like, well, take your time and spend the time right the first time, and you're actually spending less time because you don't have to go back up and do it again. And, you know, and the more of that story is like, you know, if we do it right, we don't have to start over as much. We don't have to take time off. And I think that's what people see is like, they think, oh, well, if I go hard here, I'll be ahead. But usually it puts you behind, because that little bit extra 3 days in a row actually ends up being too much. You know, it's like watering your grass too much, you know, like that's also bad for you. And so they're bad for your grass. So I think if you take that approach this time of year, like by slowing things down and being like, hey, like I can do 75 to 80% of all these at that effort forever. That's pretty good, right? Instead of overcooking it and then doing 2 or 3 days on and then 4 days off and then restarting again next week and then trying to smash and like then you got what, 8 or 9, 10 days done over the course of a month. How is that getting ahead? But it's your mindset of trying to get ahead or trying to catch up or trying to stay in the zone that's in fact actually keeping you behind, right? And it's a happy medium, right? Because you don't want to go all in and you don't want to be completely sedentary. And again, like that's why I think like this time of year people get the most value out of coaching that they may get for the course of like the entire 12 months of the year. Listen, guys, it's easy to get motivated 3 months before a race. The race is soon. You got your bib number. You've already got your profile pic changed. You got the countdown clock in the Garmin. You got your hotel room. Everything is locked in and it's close. It's easy to get motivated and it's easy to get excited when things are close. It's easy to get motivated to want to go run and ride when the sun comes out after a long ass winter. That's easy. Not that many people need that kind of, motivation, and then you got structure and then you got, purpose behind what you're doing. But right now is when you spend the most time as a coach, like slowing down and speeding up athletes. And again, speeding up isn't the right word, but it's more about, like I said, treading water. You don't need to swim straight, but you don't need to drown. It's keeping people in the game, because once you leave the game, it is very hard to come back in, right? It is very, 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 very hard to come back in. Like when I always think about like going to any kind of a social function, I don't want to be there too early because then I'm that person that has to talk to everybody when they walk in and like have small talk. But I also don't want to be late, right? Too late, because then everybody is already there and then, then it's kind of like awkward and then I'm not a social person. The key is to come in like 5 minutes after it starts, because that's when there's enough people in the room you can kind of pick who you want to talk to, but there's not enough people there where everyone stares at you. It's like that's what this time of year is, right? It's about taking care of your of your social entry to these parties. It's the same thing. Is you just want to stay in the room, get your Ritz Solo cup, get your comfort zone, place yourself in a corner, right? That way no one can come behind you, right, and sneak up on you. And, just stick with your cue. And then if you see somebody come in that you don't like, then you pivot, turn your back to them, and then you're good, right? So these are all these things that we can do in fitness and in training right now to be pulled back and slow things down and get the process going and get the fun going and create more energy and create more livelihood and create more opportunities to these, the aerobic development, because you shouldn't be chasing anything. You shouldn't be running from something. You shouldn't be chasing anything, right? You should just be soaking it in and going with the flow.
Yeah. I think a lot of times I have talked about this. I've never been able to articulate it really that well, but, sometimes I'll do, like a Moneghetti run and, I can usually get to top speed, back to sort of where I was 10 years ago for 30 seconds. And it always makes me think about, well, man, it's not that really my top speed that I need to, it's almost like you could burst it out on a bike and blast some watts, and hit a time, hit a peak watt record or whatever, if you're feeling good on a certain day, even if you haven't been riding a lot. But it's almost like it comes back to creating, getting faster in a meaningful way. And when I think about it like that, because I think back to, okay, what did I used to run at, just comfortably, for me, that might've been, 8:30, 8:45 or something back in the day. And to me, that seems to be a more, meaningful target. And I think that's the kind of thing that takes patience, and that's what I've lost over the years is sort of that, or, just that strength and that foundation to hold that. It's not that I don't have that type of speed. It's just that I can't, like you're saying, speed is meaningless unless you can hold it for the last part of the race. So I guess mindset, it's just kind of like, okay, just keep doing what you're doing. And it's like Alan said, he said, I was running way behind the guys I used to train with, and they were always looking back, yelling at me to come up. And I just stuck with my plan. And he said, eventually I was running at the same heart rate, and then I was running with them. And I think that's just a very difficult concept to grasp for a lot of people, is that, that it is a slow process, but it's a meaningful process. And it's a lasting process if you can just stay with that and keep doing what you're doing, because over time it's just it's going to come together. It's just that you can't see, and I always just get kind of ripped up in this stuff where like I'll have a great run and I'll be like, that's where I'm at. And I'm not there. It's just that I felt whatever, everything kind of came together that day. It's sort of, I slept good, I ate well the last couple of days, whatever it is, and like I feel good, so I'm going. So I think that's what you talk about with those peaks and valleys, is sort of like those days are kind of in there sometimes, but you want to kind of make everything, kind of moderate a little bit more, so you're not peaks and valley, and you're kind of always in that ballpark as you go, because I think we get fooled sometimes. Like if we just have a few days off, or, we've talked about this, but it's like I haven't biked in 5 days, and I've been riding a lot, but I haven't biked in 5 days. I'm going to be on fire that day, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's where I'm at. It's just where I'm at that particular day. And I think it's important to try to have more of those good days, or at least marginally good days as we go. And I think that is one of the ways we do it, is to not peak ourselves so damn much, especially now. Because we just went through that cortisol season, man, that I talked about. And now's the time to sort of kind of calibrate your body and your brain and your digestive system, and get better sleep and all that sort of stuff. And I just think that stuff pays off. Whenever I see an athlete say, yeah, I got a great sleep last night, I'm like, those are the things to me that kind of indicate fitness and health. And if you're sleeping well, for example, if you're not sleeping well, which is me quite often, there's some shit going on, if you're waking up a lot and whatever, that's just an indicator that maybe, like you're saying, maybe you're just training too hard. And I think that all those things kind of come together, and we need to pay attention to them.
Yeah, and I think, I love what you said there too, is like we see these great days happen, or they feel, and then we think, I better seize the moment, instead of what can I do today to increase the likelihood that I feel this way again tomorrow. Yes. Because that's the name of the game, right? Is like you said, you come in, you're like fresh, like, yeah, I want to cram it today. I mean, I had this like yesterday, like I find like I'm getting back into feeling good, better than I was, the week before. And like I woke up yesterday and I'm like, man, HRV is ways elevated again. I'm like, I could crush it today. And I was like, yeah, but if you do it today, and like if you have like, if you have a whoop, what I'm talking about. Like it was at 91%, which is like insanely high. Like green, it's like, go, HRV is elevated. Like you can handle it today. And I was like, yeah, but I just went through like a week of not being even close to that. And so instead of going out and be like, yep, today's the day, I'm like, just keep it easy today and increase the likelihood that you're there again the next day. And then if you are, then yes, maybe your body's like, hey, I'm back. Like you can do it a little bit harder. And then boom, I woke up today at 94%, even higher. And so I rode the bike some more and I went a little bit hard and I feel good. But it was not like at the first sign of feeling good, let's see how quickly I can get back in the hole. Right? I just think like we get, it's like one night of, one night of good sleep doesn't make up for a week of shit sleep. Right. So it's like, I'm being like, no, get more sleep. Like, yes, you can't catch up on sleep. You can bank sleep, they say, but you can't catch up on sleep. But it's like, hey, you finally got a good night of sleep. Why choose the next night to go right back to where you were and create more habits and do more things to create a higher likelihood that you get worse sleep? And I think there's a lot of things we can do to pinpoint that. Like I even talked to you about this before we went live today. It's like last week you and I both spend so much time in front of the computer, like with Training Peaks, emails and messages, planning for athletes. And last week I did all of it inside. And I do genuinely think like that a huge impact on my ability to recover, just being stuck inside. And so this week, like every day, Monday, yesterday, today already, I've tried to spend as much time as I could outside on like the back deck with my laptop doing work, just being outside. And I think that's actually like one of the reasons my recovery has turned back so well, is because of extended periods of time outside. And I think that there's a lot of little things that we can do to help us recover, to help us feel better. It's not, and a lot of times it's not even in the place that you're looking, right? It's not in some of like this, 5, 6, 7% gain type thing, right? That we're all chasing, that we think has to be, measured specifically by infrared sauna session or a cold plunge session or a time in our recovery boots. It could just be like being outside more often. Like, pretty sure that's already proven, like to elevate mood and giving you energy and making you feel better, right? Get some vitamin D, you're breathing fresh air, you're going to feel better, period. And like little things like that, I think are just so overlooked. Can't buy them. You can't log them, right? There's, you're not going to see ads for them. It's not going to make you feel maybe in that minute. But man, like there are just tons of ways to do these things to help, again, elevate, our mood and increase our likelihood to continue to train and continue to do work. And that, kind of stems back to what you said about the, aerobic stuff. Is like your aerobic work today is increasing the likelihood that you can do more work tomorrow, whatever that work might be. It's increasing your likelihood to do it. And I think that's like that's where a lot of athletes get trapped that continuously fail at being consistent, is they want to seize the moment that they feel like they're finally consistent by smashing it, knowing that, it's like, watching, animals like in the wild, like gorge on these giant other animals because they're like, they might not eat for a month. And they're like, let me get everything that I can right now because I'm not sure when I'm going to eat again. And I think athletes do that all the time with training that are constantly inconsistent or sick. Like, listen, if you get sick all the time, it's time to reevaluate things. It's time. If you're always sleeping bad, it's time to reevaluate things. Like something is too much. Something is too high, where there's too much stress somewhere, maybe not enough nutrition, maybe not enough fueling. Obviously there's some things you can't avoid, with work stress, but then maybe let's focus on, instead of spending extra time doing extra sessions, maybe do less and absorb more, but it's in that. Here's the thing, right? Is a lot of times it's just, it's a learning experience, right? Of what you can handle and then what you can't. And then you just kind of learn, adjust, tweak. And then obviously like your life completely changes and you got all these other added different stressors. And then you got to adjust from there, So I think like, again, it's always going to be something that's going to fluctuate. Like there's not always going to be a perfect period for each athlete that they can just be like, yes, this is the perfect this, but just understanding and knowing that like that's, at minimum, that's the option, right? Is to just to ride, run, or swim aerobically, or the day off, and everything else can be added to it, but it's not going to be added too much. If, with like the threshold, that stuff is the icing. You can either add it to a bunch of crumbs or you can add it to a whole cake. And right now, this time of year is great for maybe not even building the cake. Maybe it's just this time of year to start going to the store, right? Figuring out what you want to do with your cake, what kind of cake you need, short course, long course, what time of year, what type of conditions, like how long you're going to be on course. That's depending on the size of cake, how much I like all those things. Like you have to, be able to So to start getting, get your shopping list ready. Maybe you're not even ready to go to the store, right? Maybe you're like, I don't want to go to the store. It's too stressful, especially if it's a brand new grocery store. Legit, nothing more stressful than going to a brand new grocery store. You can't find anything. I just think, all right, what's on my list for this year? What do I need to do? And then these are my races, and then your races should dictate your shopping list. All right, I want to do a full next year, and it's not till, June or July. So that means, right now I need to really start shopping for the cake in the cake batter. I don't need to even look, or even like what the cake needs to look like. I don't even need to go to the store for icing. It's gonna be so long to take the cake. Like I don't even need icing yet. I can think about it, but I don't need to get it now. And, start doing that and then go to the store and then get ready to build the cake. And like, 'cause that's just that stuff that like, is going to end up making, again, like your most robust aerobic engine, which is going to increase your likelihood to just be really, 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 really good and fast at whatever it is you want to do. Right. So you can either get to the start line in June, July, August, September with this giant, gorgeous, triple layer chocolate cake with yellow, chocolate icing with yellow cake, and or maybe a carrot cake, 'cause that's pretty solid. You can have that to present, or you can have like a kitchen knife with icing spread all over it and like a couple crumbs. I'm all about the icing, which again, icing's pretty great, but like I'm all about the icing, but I got nothing really to put it on and nothing to show for it. And it might taste good for about a half second, but man, like you're not going to be eating off it for a while. So use that, just start making your grocery list. Again, you don't need to go to the store. You don't need to speed shop. You sure as hell don't need to like Amazon Prime it from Whole Foods. Just start making your list.
I like it.
Because again, even if you do Amazon Prime it from Whole Foods, they're like, hey, I know you were ordering carrots. We're out. Here's 6 heads of cabbage as a replacement. You're like, that's not even like in the same department as a carrot. But they're like, yeah, they're like obvious substitute, cabbage. You want a gallon of milk? Here's a substitute, a half quart of apple juice. And people who have done this before, they know what I'm talking about. They're like, where do you get this algorithm to where this is the likely substitute? It's not.
Well, okay. I think that builds a case for slowing down this fall.
Builds the case, builds the shopping cart. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you're looking for a coach to help you build the cake for a greater 2026, check out our coaches tab. Find the coach that's right for you. If you need anything from Mike, he is available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. Or if you need anything from me specifically, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man. Well, have a great weekend.
You too, man. Have a good one.
All right, see you.